Hello everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Mythic Plus. Now this week we have Raging, which means that when enemies are below 30% HP, they enrage and do double damage. Necrotic, which means that enemies apply a healing debuff that reduces total healing received by 3% per stack. And Tyrannical, which means that boss mobs have more HP and do more damage. Now tanks, this week you want to keep your pulls to less than 7, because the bigger a pull is, the more likely you are to wipe. And that's because your necrotic stacks are going to be getting higher a lot faster, and when the mobs dip below 30% HP and start raging, they're going to be doing twice as much damage to you, which would be equivalent to a pull of 14 mobs. Now when you do see that all of your pull is raging and hitting that below 30% threshold, make sure you start throwing out snares, start kiting, and even start throwing out stuns to stop the damage. Now whenever your necrotic stacks are above 15 to 20, that's when you want to start running away, because at 15 stacks, you're receiving 45% less healing. Now when you do have to run back into the mobs and active tank a bunch of raging mobs, if there's more than 4 or 5 of them, make sure you have your active mitigation up or a cooldown up. Also, for big boss damaging abilities, since we do have Tyrannical, make sure you use a cooldown, and equipping a prydaz this week is a very good idea. Also consider equipping other trinkets that have very strong on-use abilities, so that you have extra cooldowns to use back to back. DPS, make sure you bring your AoE and cleave spec this week. Now whenever you see that your tank needs help kiting, make sure to throw out snares and to keep those mobs away from your tank. And whenever you see mobs dip below 30% and actually go raging, that's when you should start using your DPS cooldowns to nuke them down. These mobs are going to be doing a high amount of damage and high amounts of spike damage too. Also, for big boss damaging abilities, make sure you use a defensive cooldown and equip a prydaz on higher keys. Now healers, this week it's important to keep the tank topped off early in the pull when necrotic stacks are low. If your tank is above 33 stacks, they can no longer receive healing, and at this point what you should do is use damage reduction abilities, or if you're all out of those, then DPSing is your only other choice. Whenever your tank is above 15 or 20 stacks, that's when you want to start using your damage reduction abilities if they're not kiting and still active tanking. And whenever the pull is below 30% HP and starting to rage, if you have any snares, knockbacks, or stuns, make sure you use them at that moment to help your tank. Overall this week, it is a 9 out of 10. This is just about as difficult as it gets with affixes that can actually happen. These are affixes that are completely unavoidable. There's nothing you can do to avoid a raging mob or necrotic stacks getting on you, which means that everybody needs to be on their A game, they need to be good at snares, CC, and everyone has to pay attention. This week also has tough trash because of raging and necrotic, and tough bosses because of necrotic and tyrannical. Mini bosses this week are going to be nightmares, so with dungeons like Vault of the Wardens with a lot of mini bosses, they can't be kited, so they're basically a DPS race before your tank goes down. Also make sure you drop combat between pulls so that necrotic resets. And this week you should just be aiming for dungeon completion. Trying to rush a key to get it to upgrade +3 or +2 this week might be a death sentence for some groups unless you have very good coordination. So this week just aim to complete your keys, or maybe even just aim for a +1 if you feel comfortable and you have the gear for it, but don't rush the timer. One of the worst things you can do in this week is start chain pulling and trying to rush. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, good luck out there.